For a night typically known for its returns and debuts, its storyline twists, and its WrestleMania fallout, the question is, did the Raw after WrestleMania live up to the hype? Let's dive in. What's up, world? It's your boy Tommy on the spot for Watch Along Wrestling. Thanks so much for checking out our video here today. We're going to dive through Raw after WrestleMania, and I'll be honest, in looking back through the years of Raw after WrestleMania, I'd say from about 2011, right? I might even go for a little further than that. Let's say 2010, with the retirement of Shawn Michaels. It always felt like from that period of time until about 2015, there was always something to really sink your teeth into on the Raw the night after WrestleMania. And even after that, there's been some sprinkles here and there. But from those years, it was awesome. Retirement of Shawn Michaels in 2010. 2011, The Rock and Cena face-to-face, setting forth the main event for WrestleMania 28. 2012, the return of Brock Lesnar. 2013, the cash-in from Dolph Ziggler. 2014, the debut and the immediate title win for Paige. And the farewell address of the Ultimate Warrior that we wouldn't know would actually be the last time you'd see him because he'd pass away the very next morning, ironically enough. 2015, I remember Brock Lesnar showing up and F5ing Michael Cole right out of his shoes. There's always something to kind of sink your teeth into, but I will say that the last few years, I really say since 2019, I was at this show, the Raw after WrestleMania from WrestleMania 35, when they built the entire show around a title unification match between Seth Rollins and Kofi Kingston. Built this whole night around this huge match, only to get to the main event and for them to spin it off into a tag team match against, I believe it was The Bar, Cesaro and Sheamus. Ever since that moment, which I absolutely hated live, and will go on record saying you just shouldn't do that to a crowd. Don't tease the match. Have set up a tag match for the end of the evening. It just doesn't make any sense why you would do that. I feel like the Raw after WrestleMania from that moment on has kind of not really lived up to the hype. But last night, Raw after WrestleMania, I do think there was a lot to get into. Now, I don't think by any means this was a blow-away show. I still think that, Raw after WrestleMania, there was a time period where Raw after WrestleMania was the hottest ticket to get. You couldn't get it. You had 70,000 people going to WrestleMania, and the night after Raw was only 20,000 people. So you'd have 50,000 people clamoring to get that ticket, and everyone extending their trips till Tuesday. Yesterday, I'll be honest, I saw a lot of people leaving Philadelphia, heading back home. A lot of people on the internet saying their goodbyes. But I do think that if you stuck around for the Raw after WrestleMania, and I do think you should if you're in town and you're there primarily to do a bunch of wrestling stuff, I think you got certainly a fun show and you got a lot to sink your teeth into. So let's dive right in. Let's talk about it. And of course, things started off with Triple H. He comes out to address the crowd. And I'll say this, a lot of what you've heard this weekend is that the last thing in the world Triple H wanted was to be center of attention. Last thing he wanted was this adulation. I'm not sure that's the last thing Triple H wanted. I don't think Triple H, deals with this types of adulation, kicking and screaming. I think he's actually quite fine with it. And but with that being said, it was a cool moment, and I know the live crowd always enjoys seeing Triple H. They, thanked him. He came out and said, it was funny, I was going to thank you. And then he brought out Cody Rhodes. When they brought out Cody, they did a tribute video to Cody. They joked around about the fact that they did the typical Raw or SmackDown before a pay-per-view where they need a little more space, so they ended up blocking off they didn't do the usual big screen. Instead, you just had the full arena, which they did similarly to SummerSlam at Ford Field, so you could fit more people into the place. So no big, large Titantron, so to speak. Instead, you just had kind of like a small video wall that they pulled up to show this video for Cody Rhodes, and Triple H joked, sorry, this is a little bootleg. I'll say this, it makes all the sense in the world, especially Raw right now is on this 17 consecutive TV streak of being sellouts. I think they should do whatever it takes to just fit as many people in there as they possibly could. If the demand is there, why not take advantage? I don't think it takes away from the television product at all. As a matter of fact, I think it makes the TVs look a little more important when you're seeing even more people there. And I think as long as this continues, there's no reason they should have the big setup and they block off a third of the arena. It just doesn't make any sense to me. So I love when there's no big screen there and that it looks a little bit different. Looks a little grungier, looks a little more authentic. So Cody came in there, they get a little video package for him. Big, huge, you deserve it chance. Really nice moment. I can say this. I was talking with my buddy Steve yesterday. I don't think he'll mind me sharing. We were talking about how sometimes wrestling kind of transcends life and event and can actually be pretty cathartic. And both of us have lost our fathers, and obviously Cody is going through this situation right now. He's finishing his story really for his father, so it hits home. It's really a nice gesture. You know, we both miss our fathers dearly, and I can tell you, speak for myself, my father, you know, I had wonderful times with him, and was able and lucky enough to be with him for a long period of time, but wasn't able to be there for my wedding day, wasn't able to be there for the birth of my children. So there are definitely times where I certainly miss him dearly, and can relate to Cody's story. So I thought it was a really nice moment, nice touch, clearly meant a lot to Cody. And I think there was a little bit of where do we go from here with Cody, right? WrestleMania 10, you had Bret Hart win the title, and you had the ready-made feud with Owen Hart. But then after that, let's say you go to like kind of those perennial big events, right? You're going 10, 20, 30, 40, where each one of those, you had the new guy anointed as the WWE World Heavyweight Champion. You had Bret at WrestleMania 10, 20 with Chris Benoit, and his first challenger was Kane, 30 with Daniel Bryan, his first challenger was Kane. So I think for Cody, you needed something to, where is he going to go? What is his story going to be? And it was revealed that it was, he's not finished with the stories over WrestleMania quite yet, because the final boss made one last appearance, The Rock. You know, I think back to WrestleMania 29 and the Raw after Mania 29, where everyone expected The Rock was going to show up and set the wheels in motion for his program with Brock Lesnar. Didn't happen. Rock got hurt at 29, and it was really the last time you'd see a real Rock match, where I think it was starting to become an idea that Rock was going to wrestle every Mania, or have a presence at every single WrestleMania. And that didn't happen. They didn't set up Rock versus Brock Lesnar. Brock goes on to Mania 30. I always say one of the biggest what ifs. What if The Rock doesn't get hurt at WrestleMania 29? Undertaker doesn't fight Rock at Mania 30. Who knows when the streak, if it ever does end. But instead, Rock was unable to keep going and hadn't had a real match at WrestleMania until this past weekend. But I had said when I did my WrestleMania review yesterday that, yeah, Cody did beat Roman Reigns, but the cool piece about it was that it set up the story that The Rock is the one who beat Cody Rhodes. So that is where they're going with this. Rock comes out. You know, this segment went, it was a first hour commercial free. This segment went a full 45 minutes. Probably a smidge too long, but I will say it was still well done. Rock has an aura about him that is just unmatched. He comes out and he is, you know, talking with Cody Rhodes, and he said, your story with Roman may be finished, but your story with me has just begun. And he made it clear he's going away for a bit, but that he's going to be back, and when he's ready to come back, he's coming for Cody Rhodes. Didn't say when it would be, but he teased it. He almost teased it. It reminds me so much of a Marvel movie, right? Where the movie ends and you get the little stinger at the end. Black Panther will return. Spider-Man will return. And it just kind of gets your juices flowing like, oh man, we're not done yet. Rock is coming back. Who knows when it will be? And away we go. No mention of Roman Reigns on this show, other than Cody mentioned him during his promo, and the crowd said thank you, Roman. So I'm very interested to see. I was almost expecting Rock to set up a new bloodline yesterday, for this to be kind of a DX night after WrestleMania 14, where hey, our leader is gone, our leader has moved on, and now we're going to set up an even bigger and greater faction without him, because who needs him? There's a new leader now, and that being The Rock. Didn't happen. Instead, but they just mentioned Roman. The crowd thanked him. And who knows what the future holds for Roman Reigns. Personally, I'd be very surprised if we see Roman before 2025. That's right, I don't expect him for the remainder of 2024. It just always felt like when he lost the title, he'd be gone for an extended period of time. I expect that he'll be back. He's still a young guy. I don't expect that he's going anywhere. I expect him to be here for the years to come, but I don't expect him to be here very often, and I would be surprised if he was there before 2025. But I guess time will tell, and we'll see from there. So that was the segment between Rock and Cody. Rock asked Cody to hold his belt. Cody asked Rock to hold his belt. It was a weird segment. The crowd, the first ever "This is awkward" chant, and Rock gave Cody something in his hand and said, "I'm giving this to you. Please don't ever break my heart again." And I thought that was very interesting. I thought it was very, very cool and telling. And away we went over to the remainder of the show. Show kicks off. One of the big things about Raw after Mania is always those NXT call-ups. I don't think they had any NXT call-ups on this show, but they had a couple of different showcases. The first of which, Ilya Dragunov, the NXT World Champion, came to face Shinsuke Nakamura in a quick match. I feel for Shinsuke. I love Shinsuke Nakamura. I felt like he was right on the precipice of being able to be the guy to defeat Seth Rollins and win the title just last year. And they've kept him involved in some of the bigger main events and storylines throughout, but it is clear now that he's just not seen on that level in WWE. He was in a match with Ilya, and I mean, it was a glorified squash match and a complete showcase for Ilya Dragunov. Dragunov had no issue beating him, looked great, has amazing entrance music, and the crowd, that's the perfect place to debut an Ilya Dragunov, right? The crowd, most likely, many of those people were there on Saturday at NXT Stand and Deliver. Makes a lot of sense. They're going to be really pumped up to see Ilya Dragunov, and they certainly were. Moving right along, the Judgment Day came out, and I was very interested in this because you figure the Judgment Day now have the world title, and Damian Priest now needs to be seen as that world champion. You know, it reminds me of when they gave Jack Swagger the world title coming out of WrestleMania 26 in 2010. It felt like this was suddenly a major step up in class for Swagger. He went from kind of lower level guy, mid card maybe, all of a sudden to main eventing pay-per-views. Damian Priest isn't going to have to do that because Cody's going to be on all the main events of the pay-per-views that he's at, but he is going to need to be seen as a viable champion. And so he came out, I thought, for the first night. It was good. And of course, he and Rhea hold up their belts to celebrate and who should jump in between them. But R-Truth, holding up his title, acting like he's still a member of the Judgment Day, got a huge pop from the crowd. Very, very funny. And R-Truth would tease and set up a six-man tag. It was the team of JD McDonough, Dominic Mysterio, and Finn Balor taking on the team of Awesome Truth and the man you cannot see, who would eventually be John Cena, which was a tease because when John Cena was on Pat McAfee's show earlier in the day from WWE World, he went ahead and went out to, said he had to leave immediately following to go do a Honda commercial because Honda had granted him permission to do WrestleMania, and lo and behold, he's full of beans. There he is on Raw. Super silly. I mean, he was the silly type of John Cena. That guy who comes out and he's over the top. He's got the animated, theatrical way of acting. But it was a cool moment. Good to see. All three of them do the 5-knuckle shuffle, get the big win. Fun moment, cool moment there. If you're there for a fun live moment, you'll remember. And quite frankly, this could very well be John Cena's only match of 2024, which sounds a little crazy, but he did reveal that because of Peacemaker 2's filming, he is going to be out for the remainder of the year and then plans to return for one more run. Hopes Hollywood will allow him to put things on hold, and that'll be the final run of his career. I am hopeful, and I am probably optimistically hopeful for the wrong reasons, that when he does return, it is not an incomplete and utter song and dance about his retirement. I hope they let this breathe. I hope they let this become like an actual run for John Cena when he does eventually return, because I don't think this, hey, I'm running out of time, I'm ready for retirement story does much. It's not compelling. They did this with Edge, and it felt like the entire end of his run was just, he doesn't know how much time he has left. And now they're doing it again with Cena. It's like, how about you just let us enjoy the run, and when Cena does decide to retire, fine, we have a big retirement match, and then we deal with it at that point. But we don't need, he's going to retire at any moment. That's not fun, and it's actually just kind of depressing, if I'm being honest. But it was good to see John there. He was also at WWE World, which I'm sure was a huge surprise for the folks who went there on Monday. I don't even know if they promoted that. But yeah, great to see John Cena. I think he had a big part in the main event at WrestleMania. I think his entrance there, when he showed up, it was big time. For me personally, my daughter is a huge fan of John Cena. I'm not even entirely sure how, because his run was pretty much over after she was born. But she is just completely thinks he's the best. She loves doing the You Can't See Me. He's become one of her favorites. He's right there, I'd say, with Bianca and Cody as one of her favorite wrestlers. And when he showed up at WrestleMania, my wife was in the other room. She was studying, and my daughter ran into the room, pulled my wife out of the room, was like, you got to see this. Close your eyes. I have a huge surprise. And my wife opens her eyes. It's John Cena. It was the moment of WrestleMania weekend for me, and one that I was happy that I was home for, because typically being there live, you wouldn't have been able to experience that. And so that was really cool. Moving right along here on the show, the next phase was that next NXT kind of showcase. They brought out Roxanne Perez, who was the new NXT Women's Champion. She came out and took on Indy Hartwell. They continued a bit of the dissension between Indy Hartwell and Candice LeRae. Candice continuing to kind of embrace sort of that villainous side, turning into a heel, whereas Indy Hartwell seems to be having a bit of hesitation to fully go onto that side as well. But it didn't matter because Roxanne Perez got the big win. Obviously, the crowd very excited to see her. And I think, honestly, I don't think they had the big return, right? I think they're still a little while away, but you did start to see the return tease for Sheamus. You also, if you were paying very close attention during Bronson Reed's promo, you had a big tease for return of one Uncle Howdy, who they also teased during one of the commercial breaks. And so I'm very excited for this. I think they had a lot of plans for Uncle Howdy prior to the untimely passing of Bray Wyatt, and so I'm excited to see what Bo Dallas can do in that character, and hopefully they give him an opportunity to do that. And I think it will be, I think it will be very successful. So I'm excited to see where they go from there. They did tease it very briefly with a little hello that popped up in backstage of Bronson Reed's promo. So you have a couple things that were kind of set in motion for that next phase of the year, with Sheamus eventually returning, as well as Uncle Howdy eventually returning. But I don't think they had anyone ready to return just yet. So it was good to see a showcase of some of these NXT call-ups that I think were done specifically for the Raw crowd. And because they did also announce my least favorite time of the entire WWE year, the WWE Draft is going to be returning in just a few weeks. I believe it's April 25th and 29th, I want to say. I have never been a fan of the draft. I just feel like it puts WWE kind of in a state of limbo until the draft happens. They kind of just tread water until you get to the draft, and then they ramp things back up. And I just feel like they don't stick to it anyway. So I wish they would just do away with the draft. But at the end of the day, they've already announced some fun stuff, which I'll get to at the end of this to tell you what's coming next week on Raw. So maybe this new era will be a little bit different, and I'm certainly willing to give it a chance. Next up, you had Sami Zayn come out. Another great moment there. It was fun because you had all these new champions come out to address the crowd and each get their moment. You had Cody, then you had Priest, then you had Sami. I remember back in the day, they used to have SmackDown the next night, and they'd extend this even out one day further. I think that was really a difficult spot for them because at this point, you only had so many of these moments, but they had them all in the show. Sami came out to address the crowd, looked great in the process. Eventually, Imperium were to interrupt him, and obviously he brought out Chad Gable. They had a match with Sami and Chad Gable taking on Imperium. Sami had the match won, tagged in Chad Gable, let Gable come in and get the win, and Sami and Gable were to win. This led to a backstage vignette, very cool, where Sami went over to Chad and said, "Hey, I hope we're even now." And Chad was like, "Are you kidding me?" And he said, "What do you mean? I had the match won, and I gave it to you to get that W." And, Chad just looked totally bewildered that Sami thought they were now even. And Sami said, obviously I'm messing with you. I know what you want is a title match, and we're going to do it next week in my hometown of Montreal. So that'll be fun. Sami got probably the main event slot next week in his hometown of Montreal. Hopefully now he returns the conquering champion. I don't anticipate he'd be losing the belt so soon, but it'll be interesting nonetheless. In any event, I wanted to then get to the next phase of this. It was a very quick match. They brought out Chelsea Green. She came out and ended up getting a quick match here with Jade Cargill. Total squash. Cargill looked great. I do think they could do a little more with Chelsea Green. I think she's a really fun character, and it's a shame just to see her kind of, destroyed in seconds, but that's just what it is. What are you going to do? This led to the main event. It was a fatal four-way match. Number one contender for the title, Drew McIntyre versus Jey Uso, which makes sense. Both of them huge wins at WrestleMania. Obviously, Drew then screwed by Damian Priest, so it makes sense for the two of them to be a part of it. Bronson Reed makes sense. He just won the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal. And you also had Ricochet in the match, which makes absolutely no sense. Look, I like Rico. No issue with Rico. My man hasn't won a match in... I don't know who's won a match more recently. Rico or Shinsuke Nakamura. I think Rico might have beat JD McDonough, but it was the strangest thing to have him involved in this main event. I think it would have even been a lot more fun. Honestly, what a cool deal it would have been if Ilya Dragunov, and you held off on Ilya Dragunov until the main event. I think that would have been awesome. That being said, Ricochet is awesome in ring, and so the match itself was a lot of fun. It was a great match. I for one, felt we were going to go with Drew, and I thought this would have made a really strange heel-heel dynamic at Backlash, but instead, Jey Uso would get the win, as when Drew was ready to do his big move, the Claymore kick, he's over in the corner, he's counting down, he's ready to do it, and who should grab his leg but CM Punk? So clearly that is a feud that's going to continue. I think Punk is getting closer to returning. He even mentioned recently on an interview that he feels like he could have probably went at WrestleMania. So I think he's feeling much better. It'll be exciting to see him be able to pick up where things left off for him. And I think clearly that feud is continuing to build between him and Drew McIntyre. So I'm sure much more to come. But a really fun, a fun Raw. Was just a blow away Raw after Mania that we'll be remembering forever, like when Dolph cashes in on Alberto Del Rio in 2013. No, I still think they probably have a little more to do on those shows, but everything felt important. It felt like the show went by super quick, especially with that first hour being commercial free. That's a really big thing for them. I think it really goes a long way for them. And for me, I felt like it was a breeze to get through the show. Kind of sad in a way now, right? It's the end of WrestleMania. This kind of felt like when you go, I made the Christmas analogy yesterday. When Christmas ends and the next day you have like a celebration, it's not nearly as good as Christmas, but you get a couple of gifts and it's fun and whatever, and you're holding on to that Christmas spirit, and then it just kind of ends, right? And so now it's, let's see where WWE goes from here. It should be fun. I'm excited to get to my next WWE show, which should be coming up here in just a few weeks or maybe a couple months. More to come on that if we're able to pull it off. I'm working through it right now. But what I will say, fun weekend. WWE did a really good job with this WWE World. I'm going to be back to break down my entire WrestleMania experience. I'll talk a lot more about it, but I just thought it was so cool that it felt like WWE programming was going on all the time. Like there's always something for you to catch up on, whether it be Pat McAfee coming from WWE World. They did the bump from WWE World yesterday, and it just felt like a really cool festival, fan fest, so to speak, for WWE. So it's really great to see that back. I think they did a great job with this WrestleMania weekend. So, in any event, let me know what you thought about Raw after Mania. There'll be a lot more coming your way here on Watch Like Wrestling. Until next time.